We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC, and a loaded episode here, kind of for the first time this season, an opponent preview in earnest, because nobody was really previewing LIU last week, but we tried our best anyway. But kind of what you guys expect from a Gators Breakdown opponent preview, that's how we'll get it started for the 2025 season here as the Gators take on USF after their big win over Boise State last week, so we'll get into it right here. Sponge is joining me again this week, and then our special guest, Seth Varnadore. And Seth was just the perfect person for this one, because everybody knows he's been on Gators Breakdown. He's done his own thing with the Gators, but I don't know if many of you have picked up on the pennants in the back, or if you follow Seth on social media, you know he covers USF as well. So I was like, this was the marriage that we just had to get here on Gators Breakdown. So Sponge, Seth, lots to get into with this one. A much bigger matchup already than we thought. I guess we found out a week ago, didn't we?
Yeah. This is a very big week for me. I was my own special guest on our USF podcast, so that was interesting. I just had to change hats out a few times from a Florida hat to USF hat, so that was good.
There you
go. No hat for me.
No hat going.
I'm not fitting in.
Fresh shade, baby. Fresh shade.
Yeah, that happened on the panel a couple of weeks too. The panel we did. I remember we all got on screen, and I was the only one without a hat, so they forced me to wear a hat. So
there you go.
But it is what it is. But plenty to get into. A little bit bigger matchup here after South Florida's big win over Boise State to kick off week one of college football season that got us started last Thursday night. So I know, Seth, you were in the building for that one as well. So it was an electric atmosphere there in Tampa, and now they come short drive up to Gainesville to take on the Gators after Florida wins 55-0 over LIU last week. So a lot to get into with Sponge and Seth right here on this opponent preview of Gators Breakdown. So everybody hit that like button. I think you're going to like this one a whole lot, and the unique views we'll get from Seth. And subscribe to Gators Breakdown if you haven't done so yet on YouTube as well, or on your favorite podcast platform. And to get us started, of course, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on in the college football world, and you got to get it started in Bet with My Bookie. Week one's in the books, and of course, a lot happened last week. You had upsets, you got blowouts, all that stuff, and that just kind of comes along with college football. And My Bookie, hey, they let you hit it all. There was a big win for Florida's next opponent, so the Gators are now 18-point favorites over USF. You can go bet it at My Bookie. It is your one-stop sportsbook and casino in one. One account, one wallet, bet football all weekend, then hit the slots after dark. There's no switching apps. There's no jumping platforms. Just straight up action. And now you get in on NFL action as well. So MyBookie has it all under one roof. Game lines, player props, and more. Get in on the NFL Super Contest and Survivor Pools. And if you're new to MyBookie, use our promo code Gators and get your first bet up to $500. Hey, that's fully covered. Make your play. If it doesn't hit, you get it right back with the bet back bonus. No stress, just a one-time rollover on the return bet, so you're free to reload and keep firing. So sign up at mybookie.ag with promo code Gators and claim your bet back bonus. All right, guys, let's get into it. So you go back to last week in South Florida's. It was the first victory over a ranked team since 2016 when they beat Boise State last week to kick off the season. Facing another ranked opponent this week with Florida, and next week against Miami. So a loaded schedule. And we talk about Florida's overall schedule. South Florida's got the hardest schedule to probably kick off the season. So it's definitely tough there for USF. Seeking first victory at a ranked opponent since defeating number 16 Notre Dame in the 2011 opener. So that's what USF's going for this weekend. In that game last week, after trailing 7-0 in the first quarter, the Bulls scored 34 unanswered points over the final three quarters and snapped an 18-game losing streak to ranked opponents. So, Seth, as I mentioned, you were in the building last week. Just it looked like a late arriving crowd, but about midway through second quarter or whatever, and then when USF started really, putting something together, I thought it was a nice showing down there in Tampa.
Yeah, the students were there early and kind of packed their end zone. So they're in the end zone and the north end zone, I think, and they packed it out pretty good. But yeah, it was a 5:30 kick, so you had a lot of people that were coming off work. I know one of my partners at the website. He showed up like halfway through the first quarter just because he had to work beforehand. So there was a lot of that kind of late arriving crowd there. But what's nice is they kind of missed Boise's best stint, and then after that, it's pretty much all USF. So yeah, they got rowdy. It was a really good environment. It's the stadium is just so big that it's hard to fill it out for most weeks. But when they get their own stadium coming up in a few years, that'll be a nice packed sellout crowd. It'll be a really good atmosphere. But it was really good with the students. Were going wild. They had like a mini rush the field. Most of them had left because the game was out of hand, but they nice and orderly walked down the stairs onto the field. There's a mini field rush, but yeah, no, it was a really, really good atmosphere. And it's finally like USF keeps having kind of these big early season games that are on national television, and they haven't been able to cash one in. That they've usually been on the opposite side of a blowout. So for them to cash it in on national TV with a really excited crowd when they had some momentum kind of coming into the season is going to, I think, really help them going forward. Because like you said, their out of conference schedule may be the toughest out of conference schedule of anybody in the country. But getting one out of these first three was paramount, and they did it. So right now they're kind of playing with house money.
Yeah, so we'll turn it and let's go to the Florida side right quick. Sponge, first time you've been on since Florida had their game over LIU last week as well. Quick thoughts. I know we've kind of talked ad nauseum about that one, but quick thoughts on that one, and then kind of transitioning it to facing USF this week.
Well, like we harped on it. One of the big things that I wanted to see was clean execution, good looks. And it was kind of sketchy for that first, unit. You could definitely tell DJ hadn't played football since Tulane, and that definitely showed. And you could lean on the ground game. We knew we could do that, and we really could have did that all night. But you wanted to get those first initial reps where DJ, hadn't been with the receivers, at all throughout, all of all the spring workouts, and even just throwing 11 on 11 here in fall camp. And some of that stuff just didn't look clean like I would have liked it to. But, you attribute to that to obviously Russ and not being out there. I know you said it too. Offensive line play was shaky in spots when it came to protection. But a lot of that stuff can get cleaned up, and, you still feel pretty good about that offensive line. We know Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson can really tote it. VB3 made his appearance, and he looked electric. So now you hope to get Dallas Wilson, back soon. You hope to get Trey Wilson more involved in the offense, get Sturdivant going. And, obviously the defense was lights out against a subpar opponent, and we knew that was going to happen as well. But for the most part, they blew them out, handled business. Yeah, clean up the field goal misses. I don't like to see that. But, again, I'd rather score touchdowns in all those scenarios. And, it would have been a lot nicer. But you came out pretty much injury-free. And I guess the other bonus caveat is Tramel Jones looked good as QB2. So we'll see how that shakes out as the rest of the season goes on as well. I don't know if we're going to have much room for quarterback backup play, because I'm hoping DJ Lagway is the guy for, every minute of every game.
For sure. And so this opponent preview will be a little bit different because Seth knows so much about both teams. Usually when I have a guest on about the other teams, they really know their team really, really in depth, and not so much about Florida. But Seth's got both teams down. So I will advise everybody, if you haven't watched it yet, Seth's film review over there on Varnadore Films on YouTube as well. Seth goes really in depth about a lot of the questions everybody had about DJ Lagway in his first game. So Seth, before, I guess just start there, and that will kind of go through the episode a little bit, but just a brief synopsis of what you saw from DJ Lagway.
Well, like Sponge, I thought he was looked rusty, like visibly rusty early. I thought his decision making wasn't super clean throughout the game. There was a couple times where the sack he takes down kind of close to the red zone, he really holds on like this deep over route when it's pretty much dead from the snap, and he really holds on it for some reason instead of working back, and then tries to step up through what I thought was a somewhat clean pocket. So there's just things like that. I thought he got better as the game went, which is good. But it turns out practice is somewhat important. So you don't want to be making these first starts against high quality opponents. Luckily, you kind of had this one at the beginning of the year here, with difference from previous seasons where you had a really good team up front. So kind of a blessing of the schedule there for him to kind of get his feet wet and get going. And I think he knows that. I thought Napier was really pointed in his comments. I think it was Monday. He referenced mistakes by the quarterback a lot. And I thought that was kind of a pointed message from him. And it seemed like Lagway after the game wasn't too happy with his play. And coming into this week is really kind of working to sharpen up.
Yeah, for sure. I was good.
Yeah.
I've noticed those vibes as well from the head coach. And I mean, I was in the room, the press media room, and you could just kind of tell it was like really eating at Lagway. Like, I think he wanted to go play another game right then.
Yeah.
So he was like, I want to get this taste out of my mouth. So, but hey, like you said, and like you both said, practice makes hopefully perfect coming up soon. So he needed to.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, needed to get on that practice field some more. Hey, look, probably to be expected with the rust a good bit, knowing we all know the number of reps that he missed in spring and fall. So we'll get into some USF talk right here coming up, and that will kind of translate to Florida talk as well in this matchup. But one thing that's kind of been around, Napier's been asked about it a couple of times this week. But of course, playing USF, you have Golish there as head coach. He comes from Tennessee with a Josh Heupel offense. So Billy Napier's been asked a good bit this week about the similarities to Tennessee. Here's what he had to say on Wednesday's SEC teleconference.
Yeah, there's a ton of carryover. Obviously, Coach Golish experience at Central Florida and at Tennessee, being the coordinator, and ultimately, as a head coach calling the offense. So, and we have history. Obviously, he was at Tennessee our first year, and then we play against that system a couple times a year. So I do think there's a little cat and mouse there in general. But I just think as a program overall, you see a little bit of their DNA is similar to Tennessee, in my opinion. I think they're improving on defense. I thought they played really at a high level on defense in the opener. Tennessee has improved over the last few years, and statistically were one of the better defenses in the country last year. So, and they present challenges in the kicking game. I think Coach Golish has a background in the kicking game. A lot of gadgets there and things that you got to detail up from a prep standpoint. So good overall identity in all three parts of the team, and I think that's a tribute to their head coach. I think he's a really sharp up-and-comer. He's done a heck of a job there. They'll continue to get better.
So Seth, coming out of that, I guess what is so similar about what we have seen from a Tennessee offense the last couple of years, but what are some things maybe Golish does different that we maybe haven't seen, or maybe things he has changed since he's become USF head coach?
Yeah, in terms of similarity, I mean, it's the same kind of really wide splits, tempo, trying to kind of get you spread out so that you can run the football, and then a ton of RPO and play action off that run game looks. So a lot of the route concepts are similar. I know mutual friend of the show's Bud Davis kind of did route concept breakdowns for schools in Tennessee and USF, kind of their favorite routes kind of lined up almost exactly. So, you're going to get some choice stuff on the outside, a lot of RPO, a lot of play action. I think Golish I'm not sure exactly the Tennessee numbers, but I feel like he motions a little bit more than Tennessee does or did. So I think he may like to motion a little bit more. It's still not a high amount just because of how much tempo there is, but he will motion. I think he's a really good play caller and a really good schemer. He always has something in his back pocket. Last year against Miami, he had like a, basically like the Philly special type thing to score a touchdown in a game they were pretty overmatched. He pulled out some option stuff against Alabama a couple years ago. So he always has a really good wrinkle. I think he's pretty creative, but there's a ton of similarities to Tennessee, but it's the same kind of base thing. They really line up quite well. I do think Golish is, his year at Tennessee he had Hendon Hooker. That's when they scored 38 points on Florida. Last couple seasons, Tennessee hasn't scored, more than 17, I don't think, in regulation. So they seem to miss him in Tennessee. Tennessee fans are always commenting on USF stuff, talking about how much they love Golish. So I think they would take him back if he wanted to come back. So I think he's kind of on the upper end of the play callers in that system.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that too. Because we were talking about it earlier. Like Tennessee, when they run that wide split stuff, they basically are making you declare that box so they can say, "Hey, we got numbers in this run game." And the big part about this team's run game is that quarterback. They're going to basically, that's an extra man that you got to account for running the ball. So the whole wide splits thing is like it's one of those things that you got to really prepare for and really hone in on. And you got to hope your front is really good because if when the numbers are not in your favor, they're going to try to take advantage of that. But definitely going back to what you said too, they totally fooled Boise with putting Lachlan in there at punter. Like that was slick. That's slick. That's basically, hey, this kid looks like a punter. Let's just throw him out there, and then
that's
Lachlan,
the special teams coach said that after the game. Yeah, he was a scrawny white kid. We thought we could sneak him out there.
I was watching the game, but I wasn't like tuned in. I was doing something, and then I just see hear the announcer saying touchdown, blah blah blah, and then I heard Hewlett, and I'm like, whoa, why is Lachlan in the game? Because obviously we cover him here, and because he's kind of a local guy, and I know the kid can spin it, and so that's a heck of a move to try to sneak him in there. Hopefully now we'll be more aware of something like that. So he's gonna have to come up with another trick, to try to fool us on something. So we'll see if he does that. But the other thing too, like their tempo is another thing that Florida needs to. It's a double-edged sword with the tempo game. So they want to go super fast. They want to get your defense worn down, but it can also go against you if you can get those key stops. Because it was kind of in that first quarter and a half. Boise was playing pretty hyped up defense and shutting them down. They just didn't take advantage on their end of getting any points to try to take the lead. So those things are going to be the contrast and styles of like what Florida needs to try to dictate. They need to take advantage of them going fast. They need to score on the one end, and then they gotta be disciplined when it's the numbers game with the wide splits on the their wide lineups. So those are going to be the things that the Gators are going to definitely have to look out for.
Yeah, and it's played out like over Golish's tenure at USF. There's not been a ton of really close games. They've had a couple, but it's usually they're blowing somebody out because the tempo's rolling, they get on somebody, or it kind of goes, if somebody else can get it going, it can get away from them pretty quick. Definitely. He's been asked about that a ton, and that's kind of you can tell he doesn't like it because people constantly question, why do you continue to go fast? So he's mentioned a few times that's just how it is. Now, like you mentioned, the first two drives, they had 7 plays and ended up having like 7 plays for -1 yard somehow.
Yeah.
In those first 2 drives, and they were off the field both really quickly. But luckily their defense stood up. The other side of that is if you go back and look at kind of the fourth quarter, it was a nice muggy night in Tampa. It wasn't crazy hot, but it was really muggy. There's a lot of reaching on Boise State towards the end of the game. Like they're not quite getting there. I think the tempo got to them at the end. So why they're just like, all right, we're going to stick with it. And hopefully we can weather the storm if we're not playing well. But by the time we get to the fourth quarter, that's when it's really going to start paying dividends. So they'll slow it down if they have a big lead. But for the most part, they're just going to keep cranking it up and see if they can catch you off guard and get an explosive. That's really, see if they can catch you out of position and generate some explosives, because that's what they're going to have to do against Florida is generate explosive plays.
Yeah, for sure. They hit that big play on that. That kind of sparked them to get that touchdown on that long pass play. And that's really all they had in the first half. They got that nice turnover early to kind of give them a short field. But, until that, fake punt call where they kind of, then they doubled them up on the score. And then, like you said, I think Boise by that time, worn out.
They're ready to go home.
Yeah, they were like, we're done. We're tapped.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Seth. Go ahead.
I would say it happens fast because it was I think it was a 3rd down. Boise got a personal foul penalty. Next play.
That's right. I forgot. It extended that drive. Yeah.
Byrum Brown pulls the ball, gets like a 15-yard run, runs a dude over. They go really fast. Like the replay's not even off the screen by the time the ball's snapped. The graphics like coming off as the ball gets snapped. They hit the shot down the field, and then they're rolling. So it's just it can go that fast. They get 1 first down, and they can kind of string a couple together. It'll get on you really quickly.
So we'll start with the USF offense, and maybe it's something else, Seth, and maybe keep here on the similarities to Tennessee and maybe some differences. We mentioned Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, and Golish was there too, but okay, that was the best quarterback that he's had, and that made that offense fly. This is a different style of quarterback. I mean, this is one that can, as you said, he can run fast, he can run you over. He can be a very physical quarterback at that size. So I'd say just the way they want to use quarterback here is probably a big difference in how Golesh attacks, with this style of quarterback compared to maybe what he did with Hendon Hooker and maybe a better live arm quarterback.
Yeah, they ran Hooker a little bit, but
right.
Like Byrum Brown, asked to, early in the game, he asked to be run a little bit more because I think he's physical. He wants to kind of get in the game a little bit with some physicality. He's a pretty good thrower. He's got flashes of being really good. His throwing motion is really funky now. I feel like it's gotten kind of worse as he's gotten older, but I think they tried to tinker with it last year and he lost a little accuracy. And so they've kind of let him go back to. He's got a really like the Tebow dip kind of thing that people killed him for. He's got one of those +1. It's pretty low. He pulls that ball down pretty low, but he can push it down the field, which is I think Napier mentioned he thought this was a really good scheme fit for the quarterback, and it's he can pull it, add the extra hat in the run game, or push the ball downfield, and that's really kind of what they want to do. Is if they can kind of get you to load up on the run, let's take some shots down the field vertically. They've got a lot of speed at receiver. Try to get over the top, do some of that vertical choice stuff where if you do want to play off, then we can throw a bunch of curls and things like that. And he fits that pretty well. He has times where he's on fire and hits everything. He's had some times where he misses some easy ones, but he was pretty good against Boise. And his sophomore year was really good. Last year, before he got hurt, he wasn't quite as on in the throw game, but he seems to be looking more like 2023 Byrum Brown, which was a really good player. So he'll have to play really well for them to have a chance, but he's capable of playing really well.
Yeah, so let's get into that. He returned after he missed his final 8 games last year of 2024. Made his first start under center since September 28th against September 28, 2024. That was a game against Tulane. So 16 to 24, 210 yards was Brown. So kind of ran for touchdowns of 23 yards, 15 yards, completed 67% of his passes last week against Boise. He got counted for 253 total yards, 43 rushing, 210 passing. Just kept demonstrating physicality, running through defenders in the secondary. He showed that last week. He has thrown 204 straight passes without an interception. That come from the USF notes this week. So that's dating back to that 2023 season. That Seth said was pretty good on his end. This is the second longest streak in program history. He owns 12 USF program records and became the Bulls' first 3,000-yard passer in 2023, while also setting records for touchdown passes, completion percentage, and 300-yard passing games. So, 26 touchdown passes, a completion percentage of 64.6%, and 4 300-yard passing games there in 2023. Also led the team with rushing with 809 yards in 2023. And his 4,101 total yards are the second best mark in program history. Despite missing 8 games last year, as we mentioned, he was still USF's top rusher last year for 269 yards. And here you go. Included 108 yards on 23 carries against Alabama last year.
Yeah. I think that's possibly some of the recipe you see this week is they got to get that extra hat in the run game. I think they're going to have a lot of problems moving Florida up front. They will be down potentially 2 guys they thought were going to be starting for him on the offensive line. Derek Bowman plays left tackle. He ended up not playing last week, but he was going to be their starting left tackle. He was out last week. I don't think he'll be back for them until possibly South Carolina State. They said there's a possibility he's back this week, but more likely South Carolina State or after their bye week, which is after that. And then Thomas Schrader, who plays guard for them, got hurt during the game. It's also possible he just wasn't playing well and got demoted, but they said after the game he got stepped on, and so he may not be playing this week either. So you may possibly be playing Florida down 2 of your starters, and Boise kind of took it to them in the run game outside of Byrum Brown for the most part until the very end when the tempo kind of got on them. So I think they're going to have a tough time up front with Florida, which will kind of really put it all on Byrum Brown to kind of carry the team.
So, Seth, I was looking at the stats. Kelly Joyner Jr., Naquan Wright, Naquan Wright, familiar name, and Taron Keith, all running backs last year. Was that stat right? They're not. No, they're no longer on. I know Naquan's not right. On the team.
Yeah, all three were seniors, and all three are gone. And they were a pretty good three-headed monster there at running back, in the back, running and then out of the backfield as well. They've been replaced by a transfer from Charlotte, Cartavius Norton, who is a smaller, thicker guy. He kind of looks like a bowling ball out there, tough to tackle once he gets going. Sam Franklin was at UT Martin, I believe, 1,000-yard rusher, really explosive guy. He transferred to Oklahoma last season, didn't play much, ended up transferring to USF, but he's more of an explosive guy. And then Alvin Isaac is from the Villages. He's a sophomore, smaller, explosive guy. He was probably the second leading rusher on the team last week, or pretty close to it, I'd imagine. He broke a big long run in that Boise State game. So they're going to be running back by committee, and they've got some guys that are talented. They had a lot of problems last week outside of Byrum running the football, and I think that Florida is big enough up front. And I don't know if Caleb Banks is playing or not. I haven't heard anything.
I doubt he plays.
So I think even without him, they're big enough up front to give USF some problems. And I'm sure they'll want to play with a lighter box, so those guys will need to be kind of able to do that. I'd imagine we'll see a similar play to what we see against Tennessee. But if they can stop the run with that light box and eliminate USF's ability to get explosives, because that's what kept them in the game last week, or got them the big win last week. They were kind of on a down-to-down basis. Their success rate was really bad. They're 32% success rates, which is 11th percentile so it was bad. Boise actually had a better success rate on their offense, and they didn't play particularly well. But USF was really explosive, so they were able to counteract that. So that's, I think, the big challenge for Florida's defense is if you can eliminate the explosives. I think it's going to be tough for USF to move it and score. But with the way they play, the tempo, they're just trying to generate explosives. So they might catch you sleeping like they did in Golish's year at OC at Tennessee. They caught Florida sleeping a few times for big plays.
Hey, Sponge, on that, here we go. We'll go to Brown. Big runs can happen for him. Logged 18 runs of 20 yards or more in 21 career games, including 6 of 30-plus yards and a career-long 60-yard touchdown at UAB. And then for touchdowns, he has 19 career rushing touchdowns in 21 games played, 5 from 28-plus yards, runs of 60, 42 twice, 35 and 28 yards. He is, can be an explosive player from the quarterback spot. And then you go to receiver. Keshawn Singleton made 5 catches for 93 yards and a 45-yard touchdown on that fake field goal that we talked about. And look, I really like Nimrod too at receiver. 3 catches, 96 yards for him last week. So it was kind of feast or famine last week when you watched USF, and Brown's a big part of that with that quarterback run game.
Yeah, definitely. Like we said, he's the main focal point of that offense, and they're definitely trying to get him involved in that run game with the number system, with their with their formations and stuff. And the key is, you look at the numbers, like say Isaac, he had that big run for like 50 yards, and then that was it. And then kind of the other guys, they really run it very well. So if you're going to stop the run, it starts with stopping the quarterback run, and that's where, like Seth said, I think Florida defensively up front should be able to handle that. Sure, he's going to get his, he's going to pop one. The thing is, limit that stuff and don't let it get too explode. Don't let him bust one for like 80. If he busts a 30-yarder, you're like, okay, let's regroup, and now we need to settle in and stop this drive. Bend but don't break mentality, in a sense, how kind of what Florida played a little bit last year too. But for the most part, I feel like they shouldn't really run the ball on us unless Brown hits a big one, which he's fully capable of. So now your big question is, like you say, locking down Singleton and Nimrod and all those guys in the receiving game. And I still feel like Florida defensively, for as much part as, you're playing Long Island last week, so you didn't really get that look of, playing a high caliber offense or something that can really give you fits. This is definitely going to be a good challenge. And that's kind of like why I said I like the way the schedule kind of sets up. It gives you that easy layup game just to get your feet wet, get your foot in the door, get out there, get a feel of what's going on. then the schedule ratchet ups a little bit where you got, a different style of offense that you're going to face with some, some good players, that are capable of, making big plays. And then, you get on to the next week and the next week. So it kind of just, you get that peak of like, all right, let's just get better. Let's get a little bit better here. But I still feel like defensively, and especially up front, we should be good, in my opinion.
I think where I want to go, and you guys put this too, defensive front, I'm with you guys on. I still think a big game for these Gator linebackers because especially maybe some of those outside runs. I like a Jaden Robinson as a spy to have a big game. I mean, he's excellent in pursuit. I think the linebackers as a whole are for Florida, but Jaden Robinson, for one reason, look, I'm a big fan of Pup. Everybody knows that. Yeah. I don't know if he'll play or not. We'll see. But Robinson, Graham, Childs, maybe Ty Jackson getting in there too from some of the speed that he showed at the linebacker spot. But as a freshman going against that big-bodied quarterback, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm looking at one of those linebackers. I'm just gonna say Jaden Robinson. That'd be my pick of those guys in pursuit, and if the guys in front of them play really well too, it's just gonna free up a spot for those linebackers to have to go head-to-head with Brown on. So, I think Florida, it is tricky now. I mean, because if you spy, if you spy, at my point, you probably go play a little bit of man defense. And that's where those explosive runs can really bite you. I mean, if there's some downfield routes there and you're spying him and your spy don't get there, it's going to be, that's where those explosive runs I think can come from. So I think Brown can kill you with his legs, and that's why I think that spy is going to be important, especially when Florida's in some man defense. So, but I think the defensive line up front, they'll have their role, but there's going to be times these linebackers are going to have to make the play, make the smart play to keep these explosives at a minimum.
I think what you got to feel really good about is you've got a bunch of guys that can run at linebacker. Again, like there's a lot. There's some athleticism. I saw Jackson in the spring at the when we got to watch practice for the clinic. He was it was like red zone, so it wasn't a long distance, but he had to cover J. Michael Sturdivant, and he was right in his hip pocket the whole time. I'm like, who is that? I thought it was like a safety. And I looked at him, I was like, oh my Lord, that dude can run. So they got
that
some
is the
there.
One thing I hear about that kid. It was like, man, like you would just. I mean, we've heard about Miles Graham too because of him playing running back and all that stuff. But the first thing I heard about Jackson, it was like you were going to be blown away by his speed, and I was just like, I saw it on the field against LIU, and I was like, I know it's LIU, but this just confirms everything I've heard about this kid when he's
he can
out
roll.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Seth, one more thing: the simulated pressures that Ron Roberts likes to use a whole lot. What's the role in facing an offense like this? I mean, I know we see it against Tennessee and stuff, but can it be a confusion for Brown where pre-snap he maybe thinks he has a running lane that's not there, or of course the passing lane, and some guys drop back into coverage that you don't necessarily expect. But what does that do for a running style quarterback?
Well, I think like you saw Florida last week, some teams when they're running zone stuff, and USF's no different in a lot of their stuff. They got counts sometimes, and they got rules, and doing that kind of stuff can kind of mess with your rules a little bit up front. I thought Florida did a really good job defensively last week of kind of understanding LIU's protection and really kind of overloading one side, understanding how they would slide to it, understanding what their protection would be if it was empty, and really kind of taking advantage of those rules. So I think you'll see it a lot there. And then you can kind of keep a protected rush because you may be able to get a free rusher like they did a couple of times last week, only bringing 4. And then you've got guys kind of sitting off on the edge because you usually drop kind of those edge players, and they can kind of be there to contain the quarterback if he gets flushed. So I think you can get some safe pressure that way, and they did it really well last week. Obviously, USF's going to be better than Long Island, but I think the structure of it and the scheme of it should carry over, right? Everybody's got rules. There's only a certain amount of rules you can carry up front. There's not, you can't have, protections for every single look you're going to get, right? So once you kind of get a tell on what the protection is early, how are they going to handle empty protection? How are they going to handle an overloaded front? Is it going to be a full slide? Once you kind of have that figured out, then you can kind of start playing with it. And that's what they did really well last week. They manipulated the offensive protections really well. And then through that, you can kind of mess with the run game as well because they're, these teams are big on, I'm sure USF's kind of a gap down backer type team. And when their zone and their gap scheme stuff will run a little bit, they may do a count in the zone stuff. And when you move post snap, things change, right? So you can try to follow your rules, but maybe I'm looking at this guy now. He's slanted across my face, and now somebody else is coming there. So you can use that front manipulation and showing guys drop in, or showing guys line of scrimmage, drop them out to kind of mess with the stuff in the run game and the pass game.
Okay. Seth or Sponge, anything else on USF offense, Gator defense?
No, I think we covered it well. Now, like I say, that's what I want to see Ron do. Like I say, he did a good job. Like I say, you bring in bring Sharif on the edge, and then you have Gums drop, stuff like that. They do a good job of mixing that up, and it seems like hopefully our guy, him talking about rules for USF, like our guys got to be in their right spots too. So when if you come right, there was one that I know Sharif. They brought him on like a corner blitz style, but he's the edge player as well, so he didn't just fly up in there and just let the edge go. So he kind of slow played it, and then let everybody come, and the guy cut it back, and that's where you want it to go where everybody's at. So, if our guys, they need to do the right things too. Don't just fly up in there and lose your edge, and then the guy's out he's out the sideline, for a big gain, because this guy, he'll make you pay. So. We got to be disciplined too when we do some of that stuff to stay in our lanes and not don't do anything outside of your job. Just do your job. It sounds so dumb and easy, but it's like
that's how explosives happen.
Kids want to make plays, man. They want to just what, I think I might be able to do this, and then nope, you can't. So I've seen it way too many times. So just do your job, man.
Yeah, a team like LIU, they're probably not
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can do whatever. You can kind of freestyle in that one. You can be like,
I think George Gums tackled 3 players on one play.
Yeah, there you go.
He did like 3 jobs.
I mean, we saw Jaden Woods too.
I was about to say Jaden Woods did it. He had one where he
bull rushes.
Yeah. I want to see more. I want to see more of that.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, we're gonna move over to the USF defense here in just in just a minute. But hey, I'll tell you what, we don't want Brown to drive us crazy this week. But what's been driving me crazy lately? I got those crazy outdoor popcorn ceilings in my house, outdated. It's time to get rid of them. But that's why I'm excited to tell you guys about Gator Drywall of Duval. They've been serving Jacksonville and the surrounding areas for over 25 years. Finally got them scheduled to come out and transform my ceilings pretty soon. Brandon and his family run this amazing business with such a personal touch. They offer everything you need, from new construction to repairs and patches and hanging drywall, finishing, sanding, spray texture, popcorn removal. That's, of course, what I'm most excited about. Metal framing, acoustic ceilings, and do it all. What really sold me was, Gator Drywall of Duval handles all the small details that would normally stress me out. I'll definitely be sharing more of my experience once they are done with my place. So if you've been putting off your own home project, now is the time to get in touch and bring your project to life. Contact Gator Drywall of Duval. Go to GatorDrywallofDuval.com or call 904-374-9824. That's 904-374-9824. Let's get to the USF defense, of course, forcing 3 turnovers last week, holding Boise State to a lowest point total since 2019. South Florida limited the high-powered Boise State offense to a total of 378 yards and the rushing attack to 122 yards in the first game without Genty there at running back. So the funniest thing I saw from that was, maybe we should just go back and give Genty the Heisman, because that's obviously how important he was to that Boise State offense in that. So certainly, Boise State comes in ranked 25th. A lot of that based off of, Ashton Genty at running back, and he's gone now. But it's still Boise State. Boise State's been this group of 5, just carrying the banner for the group of 5 for years and years and years and years, coming off of a playoff appearance. But then it was the USF defense, and we'll get into it and how they've been doing it. But Seth, 3 turnovers last week go a long, long way in kind of creating the spark and just kind of keeping it going for that USF defense.
Yeah, and a couple of them were on, Boise State was on pretty good drives. One, I think, right before, I think it was right after USF scored the Byrum Brown run. There was about 3 minutes left in the first half. Boise State was in position to tie the game possibly or go ahead. I think they had the ball on about the 25-ish yard line, first down. Running back cuts outside. USF's corner, Jonas Taclona, transfer from Wisconsin, comes in, puts his helmet right on the ball. knocks it out for a fumble. So the turnovers were really, really helpful in kind of getting this game into a blowout. The game was probably statistically a little bit closer than the score indicated, but the turnovers did a really, really big job in getting that score to where it ended up. And USF, that's kind of how they play. They're really – Todd Orlando is the defensive coordinator. He's probably blitzed himself out of a few jobs, but he's really aggressive, and I think that's what Golish kind of wanted. When he took over, USF had the worst defense in the country by almost every metric. They've gotten a lot better the last couple of years, and I think kind of his initial thought was, hey, we're not going to be good on defense, so we're going to be really aggressive and get the offense the ball, and they're going to get it back quick because the other team scored, or we're going to turn them over. Now the last couple of years, they've gotten a lot better in terms of down-to-down. Success rate has been really good. But they've been really bad at allowing explosive plays, particularly in the passing game. Now going into last week, Boise State was really bad at explosive passing the previous year. They were really good at running the ball. Well, USF was pretty good at stopping the run last year. So it kind of felt like USF's chance to win. Your strengths kind of matched up with Boise's strength, and your weakness matched up with their weakness. So could they take advantage? Now, Boise was not able to generate explosive plays hardly at all. I think they had 86 plays from scrimmage. I think they had 5 explosives or something like that. So really low explosive rate. And so that's kind of, can you stop explosives for USF? That's their number one thing. They were really bad at it, particularly against the pass last year. And that's been their Achilles heel and their Golish so far. I know somebody that likes to push the ball down the field quite a bit. So it could be if USF has not fixed that, so if Boise State just couldn't expose it, then it could be a long night. But if they have fixed it, they've got some pretty good – they're really athletic on defense. They've got some guys that athleticism profile-wise profile really well. I think Napier referred to them as pretty sticky in coverage. Like they're pretty athletic and can run. Linebackers are athletic and can run. So they may decide, hey, we're going to load up and try to stop Florida's run game and be aggressive and play man coverage on the back. And let's see if DJ Lagway is not rusty anymore. And if he is, maybe it's a long night. If he isn't, well, maybe it's a long night for USF. So I think they may be willing to take that risk. They've showed where they're willing. They played Alabama a ton of man last year. They just went in, said, all right, we'll play. And Alabama didn't make them pay until the very end of the game. I think it was tied like 6 minutes left in the game or something crazy. And Alabama scored 3 touchdowns really quickly. So, yeah, they're not afraid to take risks. That's one thing about Golish. He doesn't care about margin. He kind of plays to win. Some guys will play to keep it close. He's going to play to win, I think, for the most part. So you may see really aggressive defense from USF, which is kind of their calling card. I don't think they're going to sit back and just kind of let you move the ball slowly down the field.
And what has shown that sponge, USF has ranked in the top 15 nationally in forcing turnovers the last 2 years. Forced 3 last week, so already a good start there. Forced 3 turnovers on fumbles against Boise State. That's the most fumbles in a game for Boise State since 2016. And they only had 5 all of last season, Boise State. 3 last week.
They put
the Bulls
5,
ranked
they put 5 on the ground, too. They recovered
that's right.
3.
That's right. Yeah. The Bulls ranked number 4 in the nation in fumbles recovered in 2024, grabbing 13, and they were number 16 in 2023 with 10 fumbles. So you can tell they got a knack for creating fumbles. And fumbles is weird now because that's usually a stat that can dip year to year to year. Like there's so many variables and bounces that don't go your way. But 2 years in a row, USF's defense has been able to do it. And in game 1 of 2025, 3 against Boise. So they just have a knack for doing it.
And they were probably like with the fumble luck, and I saw some Boise, some Boise reports say, like USF fumbled it twice and they got back on both theirs, and Boise fumbled it so many times that they didn't get back on theirs. They were probably 3 feet away from 3 interceptions too. There were balls in. There were 2 balls that hit USF guys in the hands that probably should have been picked, and another couple where the guy turns his head a second late and is about 2 inches away from being in position to make a pick. So. They had a really good plan for Boise State, and I know they kind of obviously game 1 you get a lot of time to kind of watch and plan. So they really had them pegged and knew what they were going to do in a lot of situations, and really had them confused. Probably a shorter week obviously here, but I'm sure they have advanced people watching Florida and have some knowledge of them from previous games and being on other staffs. So But they were really ready for Boise. I don't know if they'll be able to put as many wrinkles in a shorter week, but we'll see.
Yeah, the one thing I noticed too, that like early on, that defense was flying around, and that's honestly what you love to see when you see defenses flying around, because that's really how they caused that first fumble.
Yeah.
Like, I love Schuler, man. That dude, that linebacker, he's been a monster for them boys.
He's great.
And like, so when you just see chaos and flying around and hitting and like, it's kind of like how Florida State was playing, like against Bama. Like, they were just flying around to the ball. Just good things happen when you're not loafing. And that's one thing, like, so I definitely, that's one thing I do like about Golish as well. Like you were saying, he's definitely an aggressive minded coach. So, hey, he's going to let it hang out. It's like, like, we're here to win this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me we don't have a shot to beat Boise. We don't have a shot to beat Florida, Miami, Alabama, all these teams. We're going to play aggressive. And if that gets us beat by going too fast tempo offensively or selling out and saying, hey, we're going to shut your run down. We're going to blitz DJ. We're going to go man to man back here and just say, hey, listen, if you beat me, I'm going to tip my cap to you because DJ beat me on some throws. So I would play it that way. Like, if you're that style of team and that's who you are, like, let that be your identity and just let it play. So the big question is, if they're going to sell out to kind of stop the run, can we move them? Can we create a little bit of holes and, have Ball or Jacoby or whoever, crease them? And, if their specialty is run defense, and that's where they're going to basically say that we're going to pick this poison to stop, and then say DJ beat me. Are you rusty still? Is, that's where we got to exploit that. And that's, again, it goes back to the same thing on the flip side of, you got to pick your poison. So if DJ is going to have to complete some balls downfield, we're going to have to get some explosive plays, which we like to do, which we saw last year. So hopefully, all of that stuff that he was upset about in that opener where, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. I know we talked about it too. I think he was amped up a little bit, because I think in two of those plays, he created the sack for himself. It's like I think he was just too amped up to be like, I got to get out here and make some plays. And, so just stay on your read, and then go to your next read. If it's not there, move on. And then, if you have to, the whole thing with DJ, like, we want to see too, is I would love to see the part of Byrum Brown, like DJ. But again, everybody's so worried about the calf and the hamstring and the lower body injuries and all that. But like, if we were able to add that element in the offense, that's where it could be super scary. But again, let's stick to what we do best, run the football. And if they're going to try to sell out the run, that means we should have some plays to take shots.
Well, here it is. We talk about that Todd Orlando aggressive defense, and we talk about the turnovers and the fumbles that they've been able to create. Well, also tackles for loss. South Florida's been very high in that. Among the national leaders in tackles for loss, finishing among the top 7 nationally in each of the last 2 years, and returned top 3 tacklers from last year: Mac Harris, Taven Ward, and Jalen Schuler. Harris led the team in tackles in 2023. Schuler led the team in tackles last season. And then you bring it to this season, and Schuler was named the Bronco Nagurski National Defensive Player of the Week this week, the Walter Camp FBS National Defensive Player of the Week, and the American Conference Defensive Player of the Week. Schuler last week, 14 tackles versus Boise State, a tackle for loss, and a fumble recovery in that season-opening win versus Boise State. So if you're looking for a guy to, I say, look out for, and if we kind of go into the game plan you just referenced, if Florida's going to run the ball, and everybody wants to, kind of circle the 11 tackles for loss last week that Florida had. Well, some of that was on the screen plays and all that, so it wasn't completely on the offensive line. But we know the issues the offensive line had last week. And just giving you some stats here, South Florida's been pretty active behind the line of scrimmage. If you're looking for a name, Schuler at linebacker might be the guy.
Yeah, they've got 2 really good. Schuler is one. He got hurt early last year, and Mac Harris is another guy that kind of took over. And Schuler came back, but he wasn't fully healthy the rest of the year. He's kind of fully healthy now. He got the extra year from the JUCO, so the Diego Pavia thing kind of benefited USF big time. He got the extra year. Both those guys can really play at linebacker. Schuler and Harris are both pretty good players. Up front, they kind of went pretty heavy in the portal in the winter window. They got Josh Seliskar, who started his career at UCF, was a pretty good player. Transferred to Texas A&M last year, ended up not playing. and then so came back to USF because he was with Golish at UCF briefly. He's wearing 63, so he got like the honor. They're giving 63 out in honor of Leroy Selman, who was big in the athletic department there for a long time, and kind of basically is the father of USF football, kind of getting football there. He got that honor, and he played really well against Boise. He plays on the interior, but they had to go in the spring window and go get a bunch of other guys. So they weren't super happy with what they had up front. So they got a bunch of older, bigger guys up front. There's a couple guys on the edge. They kind of play the odd front with the stand-up outside backer, not too dissimilar to what Florida does, and have the two backers in the box most of the time. So probably not too dissimilar in terms of defensive style. I think in terms of like structure, but I think USF's a lot more aggressive than Florida will be. So they will sell out and try to get those tackles for loss, create negative plays, create turnovers, really high, chaos, and just try to make life tough. But I think the positive side for Florida is Long Island did some funky stuff defensively that I don't think they were expecting. Napier said as much. He mentioned the term radar defense. The radar defense was from like the 60s and 70s. Like it started as a high school defense where a guy didn't have very many big guys. So he basically had everybody, all 11 standing up in a 2-point stance. And instead of just rushing right at the snap, they would read and react. So I think he was kind of mentioning a lot of their linebackers. If you watch previous years, Long Island, they played TCU last year. The backers in the box were pretty static. They were sitting kind of in the B gap. They didn't move. If you flip on the Florida game, those guys are moving all over the place. You don't know quite where they're coming from. And they played more one high structure than two high structure. So early, like some of the throws that Lagway didn't throw, they were called for two high looks and they were one high look. So it was kind of a tough look for a couple of them. But they got a good look at somebody that's going to be moving around a ton. Obviously, the personnel's not as good, but just having that experience of knowing, all right, it could come from anywhere. We got to sort this out on the fly. Having that experience in game reps, I think will be helpful.
And it's a good point because my thing is, does Todd Orlando try to attack that right side of the offensive line? Bryce Lovett had a rough day in his first start at right tackle last week. So I asked Napier about that. And, of course, as you said, too, there'll be certainly I think last week helped in how do you adjust on the fly, and when a guy is struggling, how do you either bring somebody else in or coach him on the sideline or coach him at halftime, and you have a much better performance in that regard. But hey, guys, we mentioned how aggressive Orlando can be at DC, but also we go to what DJ struggled with last year, and that was, all right, we're going to rush 3 and we're going to drop 8. That's not so aggressive. So there might be a delicate balance that Orlando wants to do. Like, hey, let's make Lagway prove if we drop 8 that he knows where to go with the ball, or do we just stick with the aggressive mindset and kind of going to the point Sponge made earlier? We're going to live and die by our aggression either way. But it is interesting, given you might want Lagway to prove that he can throw when you're rushing 3 and dropping 8.
Yeah, they did change it up on Boise State, and that's where I thought they had Boise scouted really well. They were at times there's like 4th and shorts where Boise's expecting hyper aggressiveness and has like mesh called and like has the tight end delay on his release so he can sneak back. And USF played like a zone, and that guy's sitting waiting for the crossers right away. So they did a really good job last week of mixing it up. In previous big games, they've been really aggressive. So you may see some of that, because DJ did struggle with that a little bit last year. But I would not be shocked if you just saw a ton of man coverage and like, hey, beat us over the top. Good luck. We've got some athletes too. So it should be an interesting chess match there.
Yeah, I could definitely see where you make a good point. You want to make them, you don't want to just play everything. So, this is what we're expecting. So you want to throw a little bit of wrinkles in there. So you could definitely see them maybe try and do that just to say, hey, this did give him fits, in certain situations, you might call something where you do that. And that's where, DJ is going to have to be hopefully schooled up and prepared for, when he sees that, maybe you can check into a run or something, where, you could tell where like, hey, I think we might have numbers here to run the ball, and and hopefully he has the freedom to, to do that. And again, if they are dropping in the windows of all those passing lanes, don't be smart with the football and take care of it. And, hopefully he's improved upon, when the coverage is, there's a whole bunch of other colored jerseys out there, you you don't throw it to them. So yeah, I think they're gonna go with what they go with, but definitely I think all across the board teams are gonna sprinkle that in there. You got to, let's make it respectable to see like, hey, can he do this? Did he improve upon, where he was weak at last year? So I could definitely see him, but I definitely will see the predominantly going with what they know best and what they feel more comfortable in probably.
So I think with that aggressive style and kind of going to your point there and the way Florida likes to run the ball, I think there's a ton of opportunity and kind of going to Steph's point, maybe even in the run game too. I think there's a lot of chances for some explosive plays.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're going to bring some guys upfield and you call the run at the right moment or the right run design call, and we saw what Jaden Ball can do, last week at LIU, but last year against LSU. I mean, he's got some, I think, home run explosive capability now. And in another year of strength and training, his second year of playing college football, I think Jaden Ball kind of is that big run threat for Florida. And I think that aggression, not just in the passing game, I think that might lend itself to some big runs for Florida as well. And then you start doing that, and then Lagway's just going to start throwing it over your head.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with that.
I got like a 34-13 final, guys. That's about where I'm. 37-13, 34-13. I just think the trenches. Seth, that was the first thing you texted me even before you saw Florida play Saturday. You and I were talking just a little bit after USF last week, and hey, it's a little bit more interesting. But your first reply was, "Yeah, Florida's got them in the trenches."
I don't think they'll be able to block them on offense. They had a really hard time blocking Boise. Really hard time. So I don't think they'll be able to block Florida. Now Banks not playing helps them a little bit, but they're also going to be without a couple guys. So yeah, I when we picked the game, I kind of went with I went with kind of an under. I think it's possible it's not a super high scoring game, but I think you're in the right ballpark. I think it's going to be 30s to low 20s, high teens, something like that. I don't expect USF to score a ton. Just because I think they're going to have trouble being consistent. They may get a couple explosives, and Golish always schemes something up. He's really good, really creative play caller and designer. But I think they're going to have trouble piecing drives together. So maybe a couple explosives here or there, but I don't think they'll be consistent enough to put up a lot of points.
Yeah, I'm totally like. What's funny is, what'd you say, Dave? Your score was
34-13.
Okay, I had it at. The line's been moving. So I'm like, okay, when it was 19, I'm like, all right, can the Gators win by 21? Can they win by 3 touchdowns? And I was like, I can see him being up. I could see it being like a 34-10, and then maybe you get the backdoor late touchdown to make it 34-17, something like that. But I definitely think, Florida is like Seth said, I don't think they can block us. And then I think we can create more explosives on our end. Like you just said, if you're going to sell out to try to stop the run, we may crease you on one of those because, we blocked it well, schemed it well, or we hit some big plays over the top, to Trey Wilson, to VB3. And, that's heck, maybe we get a punt return, kick return, something like that with VB3 because we haven't had much of that in a while either. So, hopefully Smack's just kicking extra points instead of field goals too.
Yeah. Well, my score, I got him a couple field goals. So, we'll see.
You got to build those in there.
Yeah. Hey, Seth, man, thank you much, man. That was good stuff.
I appreciate it. Always have fun.
Yeah, thinking, you get the unique of knowing both teams very, very well. So I like the viewpoint.
Yeah,
it's always an interesting week.
Yeah, they're not scheduled to play each other anytime soon, right? I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I doubt Florida will get them on the schedule too much in the future. With I know they say Alabama's trying to get rid of them too. They got Alabama. They played Alabama really tough for some reason. Alabama fans are scared of the USF logo now, so they may try to get out of that game next year.
Bama might be scared of a couple logos right now.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully we're not scared of the same one they just got beat by. So
yeah, right.
By the end of the year. All right, everybody, that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown, Florida USF preview. Taking it down right here with Sponge and Seth Varnadore. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining us on this episode of Gators Breakdown.